Team, how are we? Welcome back to the High Performance Coach Podcast, episode 101, with the copywriting king of the Algarve. Alex is somebody who I was mutually connected to by Mr. Tom Foxley, who was on the podcast probably 10 episodes ago. We went and we drank some coffee, we had some pastries, we had some incredible conversation. And off the back of that, has obviously built a great friendship. I've already learned so much from Alex and what he does. And I wanted to be able to bring him onto the podcast because I believe he's going to be able to share some incredible insights and some incredible wisdom that's going to apply to you, especially in 2025 with your marketing efforts, how you're trying to stand out in the crowded marketplace, and how you can continue to position yourself as the go-to, not through just your storytelling, but also through the use of tech, AI, and all of those good things. Alex is at the forefront of so many incredible projects and new opportunities. So I know that you're going to take an abundance from this. So the copywriting king of the Algarve, welcome to the High Performance Coach Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Dude, what do we need to know about Alex to appreciate now why you do what you do?
That's an interesting way of putting it. So I've been in sales and marketing for 14 years. So I trained as a journalist originally. Spent 6 years in enterprise sales. So I had a lot of background learning how to pitch and sell different types of products to different audiences, particularly internationally. So I worked for Commonwealth for a while. So I was learning how to sell a lot of different advertising and software products into African countries in particular. So that was super fun, like learning to understand how and why do we sell differently in Ghana versus Nigeria, two West African countries, but are actually very different culturally. And I love the international business side of things, the impact of culture and religion and different values on how people interact and think and like to buy and sell. I then switched to marketing at the age of 31, which is 8 years ago now. And the last 5 years have been focused exclusively on conversion. So if we imagine let's say a typical three-stage funnel, awareness at the top, evaluation in the middle. I started at the top, and the last half decade has been exclusively at the bottom. So conversion, people who are ready to purchase. What do we need to do in order to get them to feel happy and comfortable to buy our product?
Amazing. And based upon working with some of the best companies in the world, what have you learned about conversion for people to feel safe and confident enough to be able to take that next step?
What I'd probably do is walk you through 6 steps that I typically interview people over. So, for example, I'll typically interview my clients' customers, and I'll ask them, first of all, what is the pain point, the problem that you've experienced? By understanding that particular problem, I can build out a problem section for the website. I typically are after the hero section of a website, I typically ask people, are you experiencing problems A, B, or C? And then I have a macro headline summarizing all three. I then typically speak to people about the any hesitations, any worries they might have had about switching to our product. So we call this risk mitigation. If we understand that customers tend to worry about price or about whether it's the right product for them or about um, any of the worries associated with switching brands, we can deal with that on the page itself. I talk to them about their awareness level. So, what kind of solutions are you using right now, and how did you compare us against those? We look as well at differentiators, so reasons they chose our product over the competition, and wins. What does life look and feel like for you with our product in it? One of the important things to remember for B2B is we're always selling to human beings. So I want a list of objective reasons why people like and value our product, but I also want the emotions and the human experiences associated with it. So one of my favorite stories here, I work with one of North America's biggest real estate SaaS companies. To be clear, SaaS, software as a service. SaaS means a subscription-based software product. Um, their audience, who are real estate execs, were using 5 or 6 badly stitched together applications to run their business and to sell houses. Loads and loads of duplicate data, and these people have to work weekends to try and keep up. My client comes in and gives them a single platform with one mobile application, and we interview their customers, and 2 or 3 of them gave us a similar story, which is, I used to work all weekend, and my wife would get really upset because I wouldn't spend time with the kids. Now I get to leave work at Friday, so I get to leave work at lunchtime on a Friday. and I get to go camping with the kids and check my mobile application once or twice. So even when you're selling a really technical, expensive business platform or an enterprise platform, if you can look at the human experience and the impact that you have on people's lives, that's way more effective than any kind of arguments about ROI and increased sales. No one really cares about marketing metrics. People care about their families, they care about their health, they care about their wealth. And if you can connect back your product, no matter how dry and technical it is, to making people's lives nicer and happier and safer, that's always the way to sell a product.
Yeah, mate, absolutely. I absolutely love that. And I was only just speaking to some of our guys about this a second ago, where you realize that in the fitness space, it's like you didn't create the calorie deficit. You didn't create resistance training or sleep. These are all things that we now do. And it's like, what is your solution and how are you making your solution easier, faster, better, smoother than anybody else? And that's gonna really come back down to your story, why you do what you do. How did you get to that solution? And then how can you communicate through that human experience? What are people's needs, wants, values, beliefs based upon the market you're currently serving for them to feel connected, to feel confident, to feel like you get it, you understand, you're articulating their problems better than they can explain it themselves. To go, that's me, that's right. So they have the safety to take that next step. And I think it's so important. And you're obviously looking at that at a conversion level. What impact does that have from the top to bottom? So in terms of like brand awareness, looking at content marketing, looking at like the first stage of awareness, what and how integral is that in the buyer's journey?
So it's going to depend on where your business is at in terms of its life cycle. So if you imagine the funnel, as it were, if you're a very new business, you don't have a ton of leads, you don't have a ton of customers, you probably need to get more leads and more leads more than anything. You know, if you just imagine the basic maths of the situation, if I tell you that I can increase your conversions by, let's say they're currently 3%, if I can get those to 4%, if you've got five, six leads a month, that's not going to move the needle. But when you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar company, going from a single-digit percentage point has a massive net figure. So early on in a business life cycle, you're probably needing to focus more on getting leads into the funnel, be that because you're running more ads, you're running better ads, you're doing more events. And as your business grows, the conversion becomes more important over time.
How important is differentiating yourself in the marketplace, and how can coaches, consultants, experts differentiate themselves in the marketplace in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact you broke that into two steps. And the first one, which is really important, is understanding why we differentiate. There's a book here. I've got a stack of books in my, because we're coming from two slightly different places with a lot of crossover. I work with software startups in particular, but there's lots of crossover with your sector. I think we both deal with the idea of crowded marketplaces. So this book, Zero to One, which is by Peter Thiel, actually caused us a load of problems in the marketing sector, also our marketing industry. It's a great book, but everyone likes to think they have a zero to one. So a one to X is a business that already exists, a business model that already exists. A zero to one is a brand new business. Like the chances that you have a zero to one, a business that's never existed before, are like basically almost zero. And so we talk about niching, for example. So in your space, let's say someone says, I help men who are over the age of 40 who have busy careers to get a six pack and get better cardiovascular fitness. Now, if you're the first person to ever come up with this particular niche, this particular combination of audience, of problem, of service, that's awesome. You can own that, you can dominate, you can pump out content, you can be the go-to person. You and I and your listeners both know there's a ton of people in that space right now. So you could niche down further, but the problem with that is you end up with a tiny audience, or you then shift into what we call differentiation. So the way I like to visualize it is that whenever I'm writing a homepage or doing an advert set, my potential customers have a whole bunch of tabs up for 5 or 10 products or services just like mine. I need to give them reasons to close those tabs. And if you're telling people how great your service is and what you do well and who you serve, that's not giving people reasons not to use a competition's products. So what I like to do is we always talk about cognitive load, reducing people's cognitive load. I need to make it as easy as possible for my audience to realize why the competition sucks. And so what I'll do is look at my top 10, top 5 customers, or sorry, competitors, top 10 or top 5 competitors. Look at what they have in common. What are the either the architectural or the philosophical or the practical problems of their solutions? I don't have to necessarily name my competition, but if I can spot the one or two things that my competition are doing wrong, I can build that into the pain points section of my website. I mentioned earlier with pain points, I typically pick 3 pain points. There's two types of customers I have. One type of customer are not using a product or service like mine at all, and I need to convince them why they should pay for one. The second type of customer is paying for a product or service like mine, but they're dissatisfied, and I have to convince them to switch from them to me. So if I've got 3 problems in my problem section, problem A is you're struggling with this particular problem in your life and you need to get a solution like mine. Problems B and C are you're using these alternate competitors, but they aren't giving you the kind of returns or the value that you expect. So you cover all of those bases of those 3 problems and summarize a macro problem of the industry. The sum of all of that is when I land on your website, I want to quickly understand why the rest of the industry sucks and how you fix that and how unique your ability is to fix that problem.
How can you articulate and do that in a way whilst keeping dignity in check and not slandering others in a negative way?
Don't you don't need to name drop. You just talk about the problem. So if there's a particular, let's say we take a particular goal, which might be to drop your body fat while you are maintaining a very busy schedule because you're running a business. You could just simply say, most of the rest of the industry are focused on trying to get you meal plans, for example.
Mhm.
That won't work for this particular reason, but I've got a better alternative, and this is why it works. So you don't have to name drop anybody. You just talk about the problem of the rest of the way the industry is doing things. And if it's legitimate and it's a really good problem that you've spotted, ideally people will resonate with that and think, gosh, that meal plan doesn't work for me. The meal plan isn't the thing that actually fixes it for me. And actually, this particular alternate solution they're proposing feels like it would actually work better for me.
Yeah, I think the reason I ask that question is because so often I think there's this fear of almost communicating in a way that can come across a little bit controversial. But like we spoke about previously when we went for brunch, is like you need that contrast and you need that like us versus them or like old way versus new way. Like, what is your disruptive idea that you're now bringing to the marketplace that solves that problem and provides a solution to a problem that they're currently bumping up against, so they're currently struggling with, and they're not getting the service and the support and the outcomes they're looking for, or it's something they're considering, but they don't know kind of where to start and where to go. How would one, based upon obviously the market that you operate on, sorry, get really, really clear around that differentiation? Where would be the best place for somebody to start in your experience?
Nothing beats volume, nothing beats reps, talking to as many people as possible. The people who win at this game are always, always going to be the people who get out there and talk to as many of their target audience as possible. There's just no way around that. And that could be because they're your customers. That's great. If they aren't your customers, it's getting out to events, it's hanging out in communities. So, pick your poison. It could be Twitter, it could be Reddit, it could be local brunch meetups. There's a million and one different ways in which you can find your audience and engage with them. I don't, I don't like to invoke Gary V. Like he's sort of like he's fun. But if there's one thing that Gary V actually said that I would take very seriously, if you find the idea of engaging with your audience for at least an hour every day too much, go and do something else. This game isn't for you. Like a big part of your day, every single day, be it digitally, be it in real life, you should be spending an hour or two engaging with your audience. And if you don't want to do it, don't do this. This isn't for you.
I love the do the reps. And the only way that you get better is by more. I was actually speaking to some of our guys about how they can improve the way in which they communicate, how they can get better on camera. And it's sometimes it's always just about actually being able to press record and just start. And then do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. All the very best players watch game tape. And actually you just need more exposure to the thing. for you to be able to get to a point where actually you can then learn your style, learn your flow. You can build enough confidence and competence within your own ability to trust yourself, to be able to convey that message. Because every single time that you don't do that, or you don't communicate with your audience, or you don't go and find out actually what it is that your market are currently struggling with, we just then create assumptions, come up with ideals, or come up with stories that limit us, restrict us, and stop us. And we then put out a message to the marketplace that we think the market wants to hear, but actually, is it what they want to hear? Like, are we speaking to problems that they're currently aware of, or actually are we now just talking about a whole load of problems that they're not even aware of, and we're now way too far down the time horizon, and it goes straight over their head. And being able to take your customers for a coffee, or and that's what we say in our world, it's like just take your best customers for a coffee, and just ask them a load of questions for half an hour. Just apply that level of appropriate curiosity. Like is so powerful. And if somebody was looking to apply that appropriate curiosity, in your experience, what have been some of the best questions that people have been able to like ask that has given them so many like aha or powerful takeaways?
Yeah, so I'd say if somebody's new to this, I would definitely research consulting skills. Like basic consulting skills are one of the highest ROI things that you can learn as a freelancer, as an entrepreneur. Anything that opens up somebody and gets them to talk more than you. What are the biggest problems in your life? What are the solutions you've tried so far? How do they work out for you? Why don't you continue using them? Um, what would success look like to you? Some of these are quite cheesy, but they work. It's a bit like therapy. You're just asking somebody a question that leads them to, a good salesmanship is about them talking 80, 90% of the time. And you just occasionally jump in and point them in a certain direction. But yeah, just asking them about what's working for them in their life right now, what their biggest frustrations are. And again, like I think a lot of your content that I've consumed, you talk about the difference between somebody putting in a lot of effort for a business that they think makes sense on paper versus a business where you actually feel personally invested and you care. And I have a few competitors and they care very much about what they do. I don't ever lose sleep over people who are trying to do copywriting to make money. And I have a lot of people approach me asking for business tips. And there's a big difference between, hey, bro, I heard you can make lots of money copywriting versus I love writing. I love this particular audience. I love fitness or I love tech, whatever it is. And I really want to help people with writing skills. The people who just want to make the money never make it. Not a chance. No way. Versus having this genuine passion about helping this particular group of people. And if you don't care about your audience, that's fine. Go and find an audience you do care about. You'll never ever win against someone who goes to bed thinking about this game and wakes up thinking about this game because they really care about it.
One of the biggest things that sat with me for the last little while, it's actually been a lot of the narrative around my marketing actually has been there's a big difference between somebody who's trying to grow a business by just simply figuring out how to sell stuff and somebody who wants to grow a business because they deeply care about the problems that they're solving and the people that they're partnering alongside. And don't get me wrong, you and I both know that money solves money problems and you need a level of safety and security. But if that's the sole and the only reason that you're now driving and you're pushing and you're growing, the person who now again is the latter on what I just spoke about is going to outperform and is now going to be able to play a completely different game to you. And not only I think from an external perspective, but I think internally in terms of how they feel, their time, effort, and energy they can put into the product, the experience, the results that they can get, the desire, the willingness and the openness for their customers to want to tell other people about what it is that they do. I know that a huge part of like your growth and progression evolution, mate. Obviously, you're pretty active on Twitter or X now, but actually it's just been through like other people now telling other people that you're incredible at what you do and the results that you can get them and the way in which you've been able to deliver a service. So then your business has been largely built on just word of mouth and great referrals. And when you come at it from a place of being a co-founder in somebody's business, but you don't have shares in that business, and it's almost like we're like partners that are going on a journey. People just want to know that you genuinely give a shit because right now the level of trust in the marketplace, I think across the board in the industry, we were actually talking about actually how do you get a job in 2025 before actually we came onto this call. It's like the level of trust, the level of skepticism, the level of depth of relationship is so weak in comparison to I think it's ever been before, which is why that's now more integral than it's ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing with this game is I went into copywriting. I didn't even know what copywriting was. I wanted to travel more. I wanted to take my sales skills and do something with them that didn't tie me to an office. And I have this almost childlike innocence. I looked at websites for tech products that I liked and thought were cool and thought, wow, somebody writes those words. I'd love to write those words. That would be a really fun, creative thing to do. And I went into this game not intending to make much money. And the weird thing is, I've ended up making a lot more than I did when I was in corporate and I was trying to make money. And it's a very strange thing. And I'm not the only person who has had the same experience that they're trying to make money in a conventional, established way to make money and getting frustrated. They throw them a towel and pursue something not as naively as being an artist and saying, I want to get paid for painting stuff. But they go out and find a particular audience and work very hard to try and help them. And it's kind of, I think some people think people like you and I make this up, but genuinely, I don't try and sell to people. I engage with my prospects. People contact me. I do my very best to offer them value on a sales call for 15, 20 minutes to try and share any tips I have. And I don't close them. I don't need them to hire me. I just try and offer as much value as possible. And I close way more customers by doing that than I think people typically do by trying to sell the product. And even I'm obviously fairly new to the game of creating and publishing content. You've been doing that longer than me, but it feels counterintuitive to share your secret sauce, but doing that has been one of the best things I've ever done. Like nothing, I'm not going to hold on to anything. I'm going to share it all and give it all away with no expectation of return. That's when I've got the biggest returns. But if I was doing it from a perspective of expecting a return, I suspect I'd have got less back.
It's that ability to be able to let go of like needing there to be there needing to be an outcome and needing to get that result. I think that's huge. You used to sell for corporate, and I know we've had this conversation already. What's been the biggest difference between selling for corporate in comparison to selling for yourself?
That's a really interesting question. It's hard to say because so many things have changed. There's like a ton of variables that have switched at the same time. I would say, I mean, there's different answers. The one that jumps out at me is that there is so much more on the line. When I'm selling someone else's product, it's very easy to chalk up, well, who cares? It's not my product, it's not my business. I actually I didn't do any sales presentations for 7 or 8 years. I was presenting to customers individually. I did hundreds of sales presentations in my 20s, hundreds. And to be clear, and this is a slightly different take. We were talking earlier about getting reps in. Like, I had a major speech impediment when I was a kid. I had like a really bad lisp, and I got really teased and bullied for that. And I had like very low self-confidence, and I picked a career in sales deliberately because it was the most uncomfortable thing I could think of to tackle that speech impediment. And like, I don't even think about that. It goes months now. So you get to this place where the reward for getting really good at something is people think it was handed to you on a plate. So I got to a place of being very comfortable with sales presentations after doing this for 6 years. I would think nothing of presenting to hundreds of people. And then 7 or 8 years later, I had my first sales presentation selling me and selling what I do about 6 months ago. And I was more nervous than I have ever been in my life for anything. Even at the beginning of sales, I wasn't as nervous as I was having to stand up on stage after 7, 8 years of working quietly on my own to tell people what I'd done, what I'd learned for the last 7 or 8 years, and wondering if they were just going to laugh in my face and say, "What a waste of time." And it actually went great, but I was literally shaking beforehand. I've never been that nervous before. So selling it yourself and selling your own products and services is way more high stakes. It is way 100 times scarier, but the sense of validation you get when it goes well is amazing. Like the thing I found in corporate was even if I made $1 million a year, which I certainly didn't, but even if I did, you never feel that good. I always had the feeling I was acting and I was being paid to act and paying to pay being paid to be somebody else. And it was always like Alex didn't win. This version of Alex that I invented, this actor won. Versus, I mean, for me, I was expelled from 2 schools. I got into tons of trouble as a kid. And seeing these big corporate companies really love what I do, pay me really good money for it, and knowing that when I open my mouth, I'm actually being myself. I'm not acting. I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not. I'm 100% saying what I think. And they like that and they want to pay for that. Like, I cannot describe how nice and how validating that feels. So aligning yourself, your personality with your business is an incredible thing to do, but everything is high stakes. There's no safety nets. Like, if you fall, it hurts, but I wouldn't have it any other way. But that gives me a reason to, I do fitness. When I do my fitness in the morning, I'm not just doing fitness for me, I'm doing my fitness for my clients. Like, every time I sit down and write, I want to give my clients the best possible version of me. And that's a version of me that's gone running, that's lifted weights, that's eaten the right food. Like, the whole week, I'm trying to optimize for well-being and for confidence, because the best version of me has to show up every single day. And for some people, that pressure is probably not what they want in their lives. For someone like me, I love that. I love having that reason to always do my best.
Mate, I love that. I think there's a few different routes that I want to go down. The first, I'm going to start with this. I pulled this up. I think when we met for the first time, I tried to articulate this and I butchered it. And I was like, it was such a powerful, game-changing frame for me that I read in Tools for Titans by Tim Ferriss. It's like the moment that you feel just possibly you're walking down the street naked, exposing too much of your heart and your mind and what exists on the inside, showing too much of yourself. That is the moment that you might be starting to get it right. And I remember I read that, and you're like, that lands so much. And I think what you were saying there, like again, it's that way where when you're selling for somebody else and it's not really you, and it's almost like an act or a performance, it's almost like, well, it's okay because if they don't like it, they don't like the product and the program, and that's it. But whereas actually, when you are exposing you, ultimately, it's your work. And there's a heightened degree of consequence. I actually listened to a great podcast of Daniel Priestley yesterday as we were driving back from Spain, and he basically said business is a contact sport. Like,
Yeah.
everything has a consequence, and it's like when you allow yourself then to be seen and to be exposed, it can feel incredibly challenging because you feel as though the people are seeing all of you. But also the beautiful thing about that is then people are actually buying or connecting or aligning or relating to you because of you. But I know I spent so much of my career initially pretending to be somebody that I wasn't because I didn't almost like allow myself to be seen because I was afraid that people then wouldn't like me or be judged. So it was almost easier then to put on this act and pretend to be somebody that I wasn't, or pretend to be somebody that I thought that people needed me to be because that felt safer. Or it was, this is what everybody else is doing. They're successful, so I'm just going to do that. And then what ended up happening is, all right, you still might have some success, but it then just becomes an act, and you feel disconnected. There's not that same level of fulfillment. And you also then end up losing so much energy because you're constantly having to play out this narrative of somebody that you're actually not, which becomes so hard because there's only so long that you can do that for. So I see people all the time. I think me and you were talking about public speaking, and basically it's talking on stage. It's like I realized the day that everything changed for me when I started speaking on stage was the moment when I realized that actually it wasn't about outsourcing my self-worth to what everybody else now thought. It was like me now knowing that I prepared, I had done my best, and I had delivered all of me to those people. And I realized that some people were going to think that I was going to be great, and other people were going to think I was probably a knob, and other people it just went completely over their head, and that's okay. But it's like when you operate from that space and that place, which you have to do the reps and you have to be exposed and you have to have those lessons first and foremost, it's like that's when you start to build confidence and trust in yourself because, as cliche as it sounds, you're almost accepting yourself for who you are. And then you realize people like you and love you and want to work with you because of who you are. And I think that's so powerful. And that's the thing that is also a massive differentiator. We go back to that differentiation piece that nobody else can replace. I think it's Naval that says like nobody is better at being you than you. And it's just allowing yourself to do that and to be seen, which is easy to say but difficult to do. But when you do that and you look at evidence and you look at other areas of your life where you've been able to do that, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
And I think one of these things that all of us, certainly myself, forget, and you have to constantly remind yourself and teach yourself is you really have nothing to lose. If you pitch to 100 people, I mean, there's a difference. Pitching on somebody's doorstep and getting in their face is a bit different. But, standing up on stage, putting your product out there, putting your pitch out there. And if someone doesn't like you, there is no negative consequence to that. And if you pitch 100 people and 90 of them think you're a joke and 10 of them really like what you're doing, that 10 is pure win. And that 90, there's no consequence, that you don't lose anything at all. And the sooner that you realize that the worst thing that can happen is someone says, I don't like that message and I don't want to buy the product, like you realize there is nothing that you can lose in this game at all. I mean, I had, for example, on Reddit a year back, I was playing around with a particular idea at that time. I came up with a new way of branding. I was thinking, maybe we should call ourselves, instead of conversion copywriters, UX conversion copywriters. It was just a silly idea. It's like a buzzword. I put it in a design group, and all the designers jumped in, like tore me to pieces and told me I was a stupid and an idiot and I should stay out design. And one person who was the owner of an agency said, I actually really like your thinking. Can we talk? Me and him ended up getting on great. I've been on his podcast. And a year later, the fact that 100 designers think I, for about 10 seconds, thought I was a complete jerk, nothing's come of that. But that the one person who liked my message and agreed with me, that's turned into something. And even if people tear your message apart, it will be for 10 seconds. It doesn't matter. But you've got so much more to gain from the people who do like your message. And if you don't put yourself out there, people can't connect with you. And in corporate, you realize the only time you get to know people in corporate is when you go drinking. And then you get a few drinks inside you, people open up, and you suddenly realize all of these people who you thought were big, heavy hitters are all really vulnerable and broken and insecure and not sure if people actually like them or not. And the nice thing about doing things yourself is you have that freedom to be vulnerable. I mean, one of the top copywriters in my game is a guy called Joel Kalecki. Joel's a really good copywriter. And when I was up and coming, I remember Joel, who I thought was like the best, and he is really good. He described how he had recently won a big project with a big company, and about halfway through, he almost threw him a towel, and he said, "I can't do this. This is beyond my skill level." But the company sat down with him and they talked it through, and he worked the project out, and he shared that. And what I realized is, when someone's at the top of their game, if you're really good at what you do, I think you've got a responsibility to be vulnerable, because it's so powerful when if you're the top coach, the top person in your game, when you share these vulnerabilities, it's so valuable for people lower down to realize, oh, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to have my shit together completely. I can still be pretty damn good nonetheless.
You realize that people just want people. And we're
Yep.
in the people business, which goes back to what you said. It's that human experience, it's that human connection. And if you put yourself on a pedestal and not on a platform, then people don't necessarily connect, can't resonate, can't relate. They don't think that you are the best suited to help them because you don't understand their problems where they currently are, and they don't think that you have those problems and those challenges. And that also is where it comes back down to pretend to be somebody that you're not, and actually not allowing yourself to open yourself up to the challenges, the bottlenecks, the barriers, the setbacks that you've been through, maybe some of the struggles that you're going through in terms of your thinking, maybe you're thinking just now in terms of maybe what you're currently working towards. And again, I had a great conversation with one of my great friends, Brian, who was on the podcast last week, and he was talking about like community and culture. And it's like actually the first thing is like authenticity and allowing yourself to be seen, because then you create a platform and an environment for other people to be able to model that behavior. And I shared, I think it was on the Modern Wisdom podcast with George Mack, and he was talking about the compliance test with Darren Brown. And he basically talks about basically how once when they rang a bell, and when the actors like heard the bell, they stood up. When the actors heard the bell, they sat down, and then people came into the room, and then they just copied everybody else. And it's like we model all of the behavior all of the time. And actually, for you, it's about creating a platform and an environment where other people can model that behavior and it's okay and it's normal. And that's where you then really build that level of connection and that level of relatability. Because uh, I loved for you to get your take on this, but I believe that people invest or buy from other people because they admire traits that they see in them
Yeah.
that they either have in themselves or they would love to see in themselves. But you have to be okay with opening that up and sharing your opinions and sharing you for that to come through. Otherwise, well, there's all these walls and these barriers that are then stopping people. And then that's when it's almost like, how do I create something that's bigger and better and fancier and this and it's that? And it's like you're then trying to sell on stuff that actually isn't really the heartbeat of what it is that people really want.
And as well, whether you are working in a team together or you're freelancing as well, what kind of people do you want to work with? And if I go and sell somebody a version of myself that doesn't exist and they bought into that, I have to play up to that role every single time I walk into the office or every single time we have a call, versus building a connection with somebody that's more authentic And look, there's like in most things in life, there are two extremes and there's a sweet spot. There is another extreme where we get the whole victimhood type stuff where people just pour out there what happened to them as a child and stuff and use that as an excuse. We're not talking here about giving people excuses for not doing a good performance. We want elite performance, but it's like creating this like so many particularly for men, male bonding rituals going back thousands of years. Like, why do we shake hands? We shake hands to show that we aren't carrying concealed weapons. Why do we chink glasses with beers? Because traditionally we'd pour them into each other to prove there wasn't poison there. There is this whole bonding thing around taking your armor off and making yourself vulnerable that for thousands of years across all cultures has been a way that people form an initial connection. And after that, we're going to do business, we're going to do great work, but just that confidence to show something about yourself it's really important for certainly I find for building relationships with people, definitely.
What you do requires you to have immense focus and creativity. And I know that's such a diminishing thing because of distractions, noise, and obviously what we're being exposed to every single day. So for you, what are the conditions, the environment, or what are some of the things that you do to optimize for focus and creativity so you can deliver your best work?
I am so happy you asked that question. I've never asked it in podcasts, and I think it's my favorite topic ever. Because this is the single thing that I sucked at most, and like absolutely the 90% of my business has been learning how to focus. I've been diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, moderate to severe ADHD, to be clear. So anybody who thinks they can't focus with ADHD, that's BS. We're actually pretty good at doing it, but it's harder to get into the zone. So when I first went freelance at the age of 31, I was in Bali in a co-work space, and I was getting in. I was a disaster. I was like waking up at 5 a.m., getting into the co-work space at like midday, spending 12 hours working in inverted commas, eating shit food, not going to the gym or anything like that. My fitness slipped, and my friend Max, who is he's a really smart guy, and he looked at me. He didn't know me well. He's like, "You suck at doing focused work. I've seen you working. You're not focused. You need to sort that out." He's one of these guys who gives you really harsh feedback, and he pointed me to the book Deep Work by Cal Newport. That book is possibly the most important book I've ever read in my life. And it was just, it's crazy how much I didn't know, but like the idea of quality of work, quality of work. And understanding that, yeah, you need to be at that, if you're not in your top 5, 10% most focused, go and do the things you need to do to get there. So for me, I've got a whole bunch of rituals I've developed over A/B testing for 8 years now. First of all, the link between cardiovascular fitness and your ability to focus, I can't prove that. I don't think there's a study, but to me, it's so obvious. You think about the ability to focus being based around flow of oxygen, for example, um, different nutrients. You look at the role the heart and the lungs play. That's what your VO2 max is. I don't believe anyone is a peak performer if they don't have at least above average cardiovascular fitness. So that's a kind of longitudinal, ongoing thing. Whenever I wake up, you have to have movement. Like I occasionally jump up and check my emails. I might have a quick type out a few things, but you've got to go and get your movement in first thing, get your blood glowing, get your oxygen going. Playing around with different types of music. For me, minimalist techno works well. I know other people who find no music at all works well. Noise canceling headphones are a really good shout too as well. Breathing exercises are a really big one. If you haven't experimented doing breath work and different types of breathing practices, that's a huge ROI area to explore. If there's different breathing techniques, for example, but if my head's ever a little bit, if I'm struggling to focus, I'll always focus on breathing exercises to bring me back to where I'm at. Hydration as well. Just building out as well, like a nice office environment, nice ambient lighting. I mean, look at your office, you look at my office, like there's a clear kind of like thing going on here, right? Nice ambient lighting, plants, that kind of thing. Um, but I'd say more than anything, just being aware of your mental state, improving your self-awareness. Like when am I focused? When am I not focused? Understanding for me that when I start feeling distracted and I'm not in the zone, I need to either get into the zone or go and do something else. Don't grind yourself into the ground. If you need to go and have a nap, have a nap. If you need to go for a jog, whatever, you just have to A/B test all of these different rituals. But I would definitely say that anyone I know who's good at focusing will swear by fitness and by breathing exercises and good lighting. Those three things to play around with are very important. Understanding the difference between cold and warm lighting as well. I need cold lighting that's slightly blue in the day to help me focus, but that's going to screw with my sleep later on. I can see you've got some nice orange lighting behind you. That's great when it comes to nighttime, and I want to learn how to relax. So lighting is a really important one to research and get into as well. I mean, obviously, finally, diet as well. So if I eat loads of sugar, I'm bouncing off the walls. There's no way I'm going to concentrate. That's a big one too as well.
I think there's the things that you optimize for in terms of your daily basis, which you spoke about earlier on today, which is like, what do I need to do in order for me to be at my best? And actually, it's not accountability to myself. Actually, do you know what? It's the accountability to your work. It's your accountability to your peers. It's accountability to your partner. It's your accountability to now be able to perform. And there was again, I think it was Naval says like you get out of life what you accept. And it's like the higher the watermark and the higher the standards that you have for yourself, based upon the baseline level of behaviors that you now partake in every day, I think makes such a big difference. And recognizing that I say this to so many coaches, it's like for years, people were like, oh, thank you so much for like obviously holding me to a higher standard than I currently hold myself. But I'm also like, thank you for holding me to a higher standard than I currently hold myself. Because it's a two-way street. And it's like how you perform, how you behave, and how you turn up, like, is the difference that really makes the difference. You know, that's the magnetism, the energy, that's the creativity, the thinking, the capability to be able to now see things that maybe other people don't see, to bring a level of presence to what it is you're currently doing. And realizing as well that yes, there's more. Yes, there's reps. Yes, there's obviously you just need to be exposed to being able to like do more. But there's also an element of better and like what level of like quality can I now bring to this, and what are the conditions that I can create to enhance the opportunity that I can now do that. So if you look at your day, you said that when you're in Bali, it'd be like get up at 5, you then go to, and you're basically 12 hours. Now, if you were to look at like a typical working day of like a good day in your mind, what would that look like for you in terms of time spent, like actually being focused and in?
A good day involves two focused work sessions, each of which are between 2 to 3 hours long. So I will wake up. First thing I do is going for a nice long walk with my girlfriend. I mean, I'm not someone who can jump up and work quickly. I like to get in my early morning walk, my cardio. I like to talk to my girlfriend. Most important thing is always make sure, we're good, she's happy. Um, have like slow breakfast. I mean, I'll do a focused work session at like say 10:30, 11 until early afternoon. We then like to go to the gym in the afternoon, so I'll hit the gym around 3 o'clock. Get in, get out before everybody else gets in at 5. I come back, have some dinner, and then I tend to find earlier in the day I'm better at talking and networking. Hence, we're doing a podcast right now. Perfect. But then in the evening, I'm really good at focus work, like dangerously good at focus work. Like I did have a period when I was working crazy hours late at night. And honestly, I probably got more done, but I find that you end up grinding yourself into the ground and it's unsustainable. So I'll do about 3 hours of really focused writing between, let's say, 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. And I'm getting a bit more disciplined at about 10 p.m. at downing tools. And then again, playing some guitar, winding down, spending some time with my girlfriend. Honestly, one 3 hour work session, a really good 3 hour work session, you can get so much done. If I can get two in a day, that's great. I mean, Cal Newport makes the argument that humans max out at around 5 hours in any given day of creative output. And the clear distinction here is between work and tasks. Writing emails, doing reports, that's not work. You're not creating something, you're just performing a task. That's not to say the other stuff doesn't have to happen, but for people like us, you've got to be aware of work. Am I really building and creating something new here? And a lot of people in corporate are spending 8, 10 hours a day performing tasks. They aren't actually doing work. Meetings aren't work. That's a task. And so I want to be involved in the business of creating and making things.
What have you had to learn about building and growing your own business from zero that maybe people don't appreciate or acknowledge, or that you think um, that people ought to know? Or maybe there's that level of relatability and connection of like, this is something that I've been struggling with, or something that actually, do you know what, you don't get told when you leave the corporate world and you decide to run your own business that you've experienced.
So two jump out to me. The first we've covered, which is the ability to do focus work. School never taught me that. Work never taught me that. The fact that if you're in a job, it's very much like bowling with the guardrails on, right? There's only so much you can screw up because someone's keeping an eye on you. There's also only so much you can do in terms of high scores as well. Working for yourself is like giving yourself a really long piece of rope. Whether or not you use that to achieve more highly or to hang yourself is kind of on you, kind of macabre, but it's very much you can screw up big time with your own business. You could go way too far down the wrong road and no one's looking out for you. That's why it's important to have people like you, to have accountability. It's why getting involved in a local entrepreneur meetup, having anybody that you can talk to regularly to get feedback from is important because you could really be going down the wrong path and not know. So the first one is, yeah, that focus work, the ability to do focus work and accountability. The second one is accounting. And I suck at accounting. And there are certain things that you have to distinguish between things you're not very good at that you could get good at, and things where you're just like, I will never be good at accounting. And I spend a couple of £100 a month on a really decent accountant. And I said to him, I need you to understand how grossly irresponsible and immature I am. I am a child with numbers. I'm good at making money. I'm terrible at managing it, and I will absolutely ruin everything. I do no paperwork. I do no bookkeeping, and I never will do. Please, can you help me? I don't care how much it costs. And he's great. He's awesome. He was like, don't worry, we've got you covered. £200 a month, and all my bookkeeping's done for me. And his team of wonderful, amazing assistants. If they need paperwork for me 6 weeks in advance, they start emailing me 6 weeks in advance once a week, and they start getting angry and almost shouting at me to do it for them. So if there's something you really suck at, you might need to get good at it, or you might need to understand and be honest to yourself and say, I will never be good at accounting, but I know it's important and it will wreck my business. And let's just be honest and say, I suck at this thing and I need to get a partner. It could be a business partner. You might be a software developer. You might decide to get good at marketing, or you might hold up your hands and say, that's just not me. So get an expert on board. The really cool thing about business is when you realize that this task that you hate and cannot stand, someone else loves doing it. That's their favorite thing in the world. And why would you make yourself do something that you hate when you could get somebody on board who loves it and can do a much better job than you can?
So if we look at your greatest skill set, which is copywriting, what do you think are some of the key ingredients that people need in order to become a great copywriter?
Depends on the sector that you're working in. And, I work specifically with startups and I work specifically on website homepages. So I would say the agnostic skills that any copywriter needs are the ability to empathize. And I look at empathy and creativity a little bit differently to some people. I think that empathy and creativity are skills, and I think you can get good at either of those skills. I don't think they're just innate. And you can get good at empathizing with people by simply talking to more of them. So, whatever kind of copywriter you are, whatever kind of sector you're dealing with, be it fitness, be it tech, you better be interested in that sector. You better care about it because you're not going to stand much of a chance against someone who loves that sector. I love tech. I absolutely love tech and gadgets. And I was already immersed in that world long before I got into it. And yeah, like I said, I have competition, but good luck to anybody who doesn't actually care about tech. Beyond that, that innate passion and curiosity for your audience and for your scene, you've got to develop some domain expertise. Now, for my area of website copywriting, that's learning a little bit of SEO, search engine optimization, just a little bit. We call on-page SEO, understanding what Google's looking for in terms of the words that you use. That's less and less important than it used to be because Google's better and better at recognizing high quality copy and penalizing people who play tricks. Design principles, basic design principles. So I work closely with design teams, and by studying and understanding design principles, by switching from using Google Docs to using Figma, which is Figma is the main tool used by design agencies. I would say any area of marketing, you've always got your core skill, and then you have ancillary skills. So in terms of a whole generalist versus specialist, one penny drop moment for me was when I first discovered the idea of the T model. The T model is you have an area of specialization at one thing, but you have a baseline level of skills at the supporting areas. So I'm aimed to be elite at copywriting, but I have passable skills at SEO, at design, and what we call CRO, which is the art of conversion rate optimization. I'm not an expert at those three things, but I have passable skills and I can collaborate. So work out what your ancillary skills are. Often they're the teams that you collaborate with most, and make sure you've got passable skills at those so you can work closely with them.
What's the challenge with just outcome-based marketing?
Great question. I think that there is a lot about, I don't want to say selling and buying because that's kind of, it's a bit bigger than that. A lot about the human experience, a lot about your audience's experiences, a lot about the connection between you and your business and customers that can't be measured. And you might look at metrics. And I was saying to you before this call, for example, that my opening 5 months of last year for business, I made more money than I did the first 5 months of this year for business. Yet I was way more excited at the beginning of this year because I could just feel something was different. I could feel that I was having conversations at a higher level and bigger doors were opening. And none of that was reflected in the numbers. And the last month, those things are now happening in my business that reflect that shift. And you've got to look at numbers. You have to take data on board, but you also have to bear in mind the limitations of the data too. And it's like always the same pattern in every area of life, which is there's two extremes and there's a sweet spot. One extreme is obviously having a very poor handle on the data. You don't know your conversions, you don't know your revenue, you don't know your sales figures. The other extreme is you live and die by those factors. And there's a reason why economists aren't entrepreneurs. Economists are very good at explaining why things happened. Economists are not very good at predicting the future. And really great entrepreneurs, you look at somebody like Steve Jobs. Was Steve Jobs a numbers guy? Steve Jobs was somebody who had ideas and values and storytelling, and numbers matter. Your business will die if you don't get the numbers right. And I say that as someone who sucks at accounting. But really good business owners know they trust in ideas, they trust in values, they trust in stories, and they know that there are things about their audience and their business that can't be measured. And you should definitely listen to that.
How has AI shaped the way in which you work now?
So AI is fantastic at sentiment analysis. So previously, I have various things I do ahead of a project of a strategy stage. I interview customers. I might do 10 or 15 customer interviews. I might survey customers. I also do competitor analysis. So looking at reviews for competing products to see what frustrates people about that product. And I always have this bottleneck of how many customer surveys can I really read? And I still read them by hand. I can now survey 10,000 customers. I could scrape thousands of competitor reviews, and I can ask AI to rank the top keywords, the top frustrations, the top goals, the top themes with a huge amount of volume that simply wasn't possible. So that's the main use case. AI is also great for spitting out ideas. It's very much garbage in, garbage out. So I spend a lot of time training the AI on my business, my audience, my customers, giving it as much information as possible. I ask it to generate ideas, to generate potential headlines. Very rarely are those headlines usable out of the box. So I don't worry about being replaced at all by AI. There's a basic logical fail there, which is if you look at a workout routine, you could tell me off the bat if that was a good workout routine or not. AI might generate the workout routine, but you've got the domain expertise as a PT to tell me if that's a good workout routine. Um, I could generate copy with AI, but I need to be able to look at that and ascertain, yeah, that looks pretty good. No, it doesn't. We need to tighten it up. So yes, AI is helpful for generating copy, but only to the degree of the skill of a copywriter using it. So I don't worry about getting replaced at all in that sense. It's useful for breaking through creative barriers and spitting out ideas. It needs a lot of guidance to get there. And the way I describe AI and copywriting at the moment would be, let's say we're chefs, we're cooking, and there's 3 steps to cooking. The first step is you get your ingredients. The second step is you cook. The third step is your presentation skills. About 2 years ago, most of the AI platforms for copywriting were focused at the most surface level. They were looking at presentation, which is to say, use active tense, avoid words ending ing, use impactful language, use these words, don't use those words. That's a very shallow take on copywriting. Right now, AI copywriting platforms are dealing with a cookery stage, which is frameworks. So I could say, for example, take a framework like the product for audience, the product that solves problem A, and create different frameworks to help people to write more structured copy. But the deepest level for copywriting is at the ingredients level. No matter how good you are as a chef, you can't cook well with bad ingredients. Our ingredients are customer intelligence, market intelligence, competition intelligence. No matter how good you are as copywriting, if you haven't spoken to your audience, if you haven't researched your market, and if you don't know what your competition are doing and haven't identified the problems of that, you can't really write great copy. You need those ingredients. And the next step for these AI platforms, and I'm consulting with a few of them, is how can we feed them with customer intelligence? Could we run an automated survey, capture customer intelligence, and feed that into the AI? That'll be the next step, I think.
I think the thing that really lands there, you said garbage in, garbage out.
Yep, 100%.
And recognizing and realizing that still, like the most powerful and the most important piece that you now have is being able to understand your market, understand your people, actually have genuine conversations, listen, have that level of empathy and understanding, being able to reflect, mirror, and then digest and absorb exactly what has been said. And then how do I then actually use that within my marketing, my messaging to now be able to go and connect with more people? And I think like there's such a go back to you said, it's like we're just developing skills. When you think about business, there's like 3 levels. So it's like you got to be able to, you're always developing skills all the time. But there's skills and then there's strategies and then there's systems. It's like, but you can have all the strategy, you can have all the systems in the world, but if you haven't got the skills at the foundational level, then it doesn't matter how good your strategy or your systems are. Like you're always going to now be so limited. And that's why like you being able to get better by doing more, being exposed, doing the reps, understanding like where is my zone of excellence? Where do I want to spend more of my time? Where do I want to delegate, defer, or delete? Because do you know what? Accounting and numbers is not my bag. Let me go and let somebody else now deal with that. So I can now just really prioritize going more narrow and deep. So I can now become the very best at what it is that I do is so integral. So mate, I absolutely love that. 2 final questions for me. What does building a business that you're proud of look like to Alex?
Social impact. So and I think we were talking about this a while back. We had a meet up with a bunch of your friends as well, and I wish the average person understood how much, maybe not all, but a lot of entrepreneurs are genuinely motivated by helping people. And I think that sounds like a lip service thing, but it really is true. Like the kick I get out of closing a 10 or $20,000 deal is less than the kick of a single business owner who hired me for a roast for free. A roast is me giving them tips to improve their website for $350. Dude comes back to me and says, I had 0 customers for weeks. I put your tips into practice and I've got my first 2 customers. That is, I walk around with a smile on my face, like for the rest of the day. If I close a 10 or $20,000 deal, that's cool. That's nice. Money. I like money. But I've helped another wealthy person get wealthier. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me as well, there's no contradiction here, because the more that I charge my high-end customers, my big corporates, the more bandwidth that gives me to help people at the lower end for free, which is a really nice setup. Um, so yeah, I mean, a successful business for me isn't just about revenue, although the revenue needs to be there. It's about a whole load of individual business owners, solo entrepreneurs, small companies saying, thank you, you helped me figure out how to tell my story. And I'm not taking anything away from they built the product, they built the service. I didn't do that. But if I can help them to tell their story and figure out how to position their product in the market so they find it easy to get customers, that's it. I'd like to, I mean, if I could buy a Porsche out of all of that one day, that's sweet, but I won't lie on my deathbed wishing I owned a Porsche. I would definitely lie on my deathbed wishing I'd figured out a way to help people if all I ever did was make money.
I hear you, dude. What was the last thing that you changed your mind on?
Um, you can edit the silence out. Give me a little time to
Oh my
think.
God, I mean, mate, I'm here for it. This is better. Mate, that's what we need. We need this. We need the silence. You make your thinking. That's good.
Um, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Actually, it's an interesting one, actually. It's kind of funny. I would say the last thing I actually probably changed my mind on was coaching. Um, I would say that when I was a copywriter, I mean, I had a decent background in terms of sales and writing skills, and I never paid for any courses. I just taught myself, and I kind of scoffed at the idea of coaching. And it was only when I shifted into this new gear from going from copywriting up to trying to help people at scale. I don't know what I even call myself, but heading towards course creation, heading towards more teaching other people how to write copy, and realizing how out of my depth I was. And I think a lot of the messages from coaches that had previously, I don't think were wrong, but didn't necessarily have any impact on me, suddenly started to make sense and connect. And it was really funny. The timing at which I met you was very interesting. It was kind of a perfect timing because I was just taking those steps into this new sort of more outward looking position on my business around the time I met you. And if I'd met you a year previously, still think you're a great guy, but those messages wouldn't have meant as much to me. And those steps now that I'm taking, realizing the current version of me cannot do this. And being skilled as a creative person isn't enough. I need to really up my gears in terms of thinking how I can reach out and have a confidence to deliver a message at scale. Um, so yeah, I would say understanding the importance of investing in coaching and getting external help is something that I've only recently been at the point where I realize I need that. I really need that. I've got to a certain point, but I cannot go further without other people helping me now.
Yeah, I always love the thought process of like we all stand on the shoulders. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and everybody holds a piece of the puzzle. And it's about trying to find the right guide, which can take time.
Yeah.
But it's just recognizing and being open to that and acknowledging that, yeah, everybody you come into contact with can teach you something. You can learn something. You can take something. Oh, I've been able to take so much away from you just from the conversation we've had back and forth. And I think if you go in with that general level of like appropriate curiosity, you know, what you can extract and what you can take and what you can model and what you can trait jack and what you can learn, I think is absolutely formidable. And if you are open enough to be constantly curious to what's this person, you know, what am I getting from like what am I getting? Not you know, not actively. It's like that's not the game of the aim of the game, the relationship. If you can understand how they think, how they behave, how they perform, how they do business, how they write, how they whatever, you know, how they make you feel, it's like understanding, right, okay, what are the mechanics behind that? And why do I feel the way in which I do? Right, okay, that's actually something that I really like and I really value. So actually, do you know what? How can I then model that and trait jack that in a way? Because if I know that's what I'm receptive to, and I think, you know, whether that's now in paid coaching or actually, do you know what? I think we're being coached all the time, but it's having that level of awareness. You even think about, I think about this all the time. I feel like our dogs, you know, are coaching us all the time in a slightly different way. So mate, I absolutely love that. Dude, I love this conversation. I massively appreciate your time. Where can the listeners go and find out more about what you do?
You could follow me on Twitter, which is simply Napier Holland. You could check out my personal website, which is alexnapierholland.com, or you could check out my agency, which is gorillaflow.com.
Dude, you're an absolute legend. We'll go and grab a pastry and a coffee very soon. And mate, I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Joe.